Hello, and thank you for joining us for this post-show discussion after this extraordinary performance by Scottish Dance Theatre. My name's Theo Clinkard, and I'm really honoured to be facilitating this chat. In a moment, I'm going to invite everyone to introduce themselves and their role in the production. But just first, I want to say you are welcome to send me questions to this magic little page. And you can do that on Twitter, SDT Dance, or Instagram, Scottish Dance Theatre. And there's actually a bar, I think, underneath your live stream page. So the information will be there if you need some support. Maybe we can just go around this way and you can introduce yourself and your role in the production.
I'm Matthias Strahm. I'm the costume and set designer.
I'm Emma Jones, and I'm the lighting designer.
Hello, I'm Joan Clevillé, and I'm the choreographer.
I'm Tao-Anas, and I'm a digital artist.
I am Jessie Smith, and I'm one of the dancers with the company.
I am Solène Weinachter, and I am a dancer in the company.
Thank you so much. I just want to say a big thank you for your incredible work, and not just the beautiful piece, but the extraordinary achievement of such an unusual new way of working, like a totally different context to what you would normally do. So yeah, I'm just so full of images and ideas and atmospheres and full. I feel totally full. And my first question for you before we dive into technology world is just I don't want to set you up to explain the thing that we've just been watching, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the kind of earliest seed of an idea, like what caught your attention or inspired the very beginning of this journey.
Yeah, I think that when I decided we were going to do this piece, it's not like it had been cooking for years or anything like that. It was very much a response, like so many of the things that we've done this year in a way, to the situation that we found ourselves, being again in lockdown, etc., working with lots of restrictions, and then deciding that we were going to explore this idea of a digital performance, live digital performance, because that really excited me. And then I suppose I just kind of thought, okay, we haven't been together creating on this scale as a company for a year. I can't ignore where we're at. I can't ignore what's just happened, even though I didn't want to make a COVID piece. So
you said this to me earlier today, and I was thinking you did manage to get a sourdough baking happening.
Yeah, so I was, I suppose, balancing that kind of not wanting to make the COVID piece, but also it being impossible to ignore where we're at. And I think time, in a way, was something that just kind of stood out about the experience in the last year. The fact that time seemed to expand at times, and a week was lasting ages, and then suddenly it contracted, and we were in Christmas, and time had flown, and then suddenly things repeated themselves, and you're like, I can't believe this is happening again. So this almost heightened awareness of time was very much present, I think, and I think that's what I started a little bit as a seed. I think also the fact that we were coming back to the stage was important for me to acknowledge that and to celebrate it and to kind of like put it forward in a way, and to celebrate the theater, the team that works here, and to embrace that theatricality, which I think I just love about the experience of going to the theater. And so the challenge was to try and communicate that, I suppose, on this medium digitally. And I suppose that those two things then, when we started to work, brought us to the baroque era, baroque aesthetic, their sort of obsession almost with time, with seizing the moment, with death, the fragility of the body, which obviously been very present in this time, but also with theatricality, like with putting on a show, hiding and revealing things, using light. So yeah. So we put all of that in the pot and start.
It's so interesting when you talk about time, because I think I had the extraordinary experience of being kind of here in the theatre and seeing almost like the movie being made. So all of the kind of strings and the puppet strings, if you like. And the devices, the theatrical edit devices, and also kind of somehow filmic edit devices or perspective. And I was thinking, you talk about time, but so much of my experience was also about space and perspective, which is just like a nice maybe byproduct, I guess, because time's running. You're making these choices about how you, articulate space in different ways. And I suppose then having kind of witnessed the essentially like what appears to be like fragility. I mean, I know it's very well rehearsed, but it's like so much could go wrong. And I was just wondering for the whole team, like, is there, like what surprised you about this process? So you might have planned to do something one way, but what was a hiccup that became a revelation maybe? Or was there stuff that you learned by doing this? Matthias.
Well, for myself, I really realized that I actually have to do the opposite that I normally do in theater design. Like normally, of course, I create a space and try to put a performer that stands out in front of it or lives within it, but kind of like to focus the eye on the performer. And I've realized here I don't need to guide the eye like Tao is doing this with the camera. I just need to create a space that is visually interesting and also that the whole space is interesting and that I have depth that is there and creates a richness, and then have a simple performer that lives in front of the camera and is chosen, like framed by Tao. So it's the opposite of what I normally would do in a live stage, which was quite a learning curve in the beginning, and also I had to keep reminding me, and we had to keep reminding each other of kind of like, you don't need to frame anything, you don't need to highlight the performer, you need to create an interesting space, and Tao is gonna create the frame and the highlight. So it was kind of like, opposite, do the opposite. Okay.
And how was it for you, Emma?
I think it was interesting because we made lots of choices early on that we then complete, like the show on Monday, lighting-wise, was completely different to the show that we just performed. And we'd made decisions. We did stick with the decision of no side lighting, which is quite an unusual thing for dance. But we decided it was going to be very much the same all the way through. There would maybe be a big lighting change when the big door opened at the back, but that would probably be about it. And we wouldn't be really doing anything theatrical. We certainly wouldn't be using any color or any tricks. And I think the turning point was that we put there's a light in the trap, and it lights Jessie's face as she opens it. And for me, that was like, well, yeah, it's a theatre show. Yes, we're working in this new way, and this new sort of hybrid is what I felt like I was working in. But we can still use the tools and the tricks and the beautiful sort of looks that we use in theatre. And that's when it switched for me. I think that was on Monday. We'd already lit the show on Friday. So I've spent the week relighting it, yeah.
Thank you. Solène?
I'm not even sure I remember the question.
Well, maybe like compared to what you thought, where you started out, was there something that changed for you or something that was unexpected in the process?
Yes, but maybe it's very much at the end. I could not imagine how nervous I would get tonight. I'm so surprised, because we haven't had really an audience live. So you just do this with your friends, your colleagues. You just run the show, it's going all right. And then suddenly tonight, it's just like, you can keep on thinking of everything that can go wrong. And so that's kind of a very different to what I expected in that way. Yeah.
For me, that there are two things. There's like the excitement of, so when you perform on stage, you're like in the wings, you're off, you're out of the wings, you're on. And there's this thrilling moment where you take that step. And this piece, of course, has it like en masse on a completely different condensed experience. So, you know when you've just sort of slipped out of the camera when you're on. So there's that kind of like naughty, excited performer that can come out and can have a bit of fun, which my character gets to do. And the other thing was that because we had to work in this strange way right from the beginning, so like Joan was working with us one-to-one, or maybe him and two dancers or something. The piece feels a little bit like a gift in itself, because it wasn't until Friday/Monday that we were here in this slightly sacred space to see it all come together. So it's felt to me like just such a sort of delightful, joyous thing, even though it's also been stressful, because these things are. you know, to come from working in what felt like such a dissipated way, and for you to have threaded it all together and to have made something so coherent and beautiful in a medium that we've never worked with before, for me is just such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Tao?
I'll also ask you to repeat the question.
Well, have you done something like this before? Is this a first for you to be so choreographed, essentially, or?
Yes, yeah, first time. It was very interesting. And yeah, when Joan contacted me, I was like, okay, that's all I've ever wanted to do, but that's a challenge. One shot.
There was one point I saw you stepping over a kind of dead body, and I was just like,
Yeah.
how on earth is he managing to have his brain in all these different places? Like, extraordinary.
It is, yeah, you have to think of a lot of things, but that's, yeah.
You've become a dancer, Tao.
I became a dancer officially.
Well, you're kind of carrying us through it. You know, we are your eye, you are our eye somehow collectively. It's the most amazing kind of experience somehow.
It is, yeah, it's very interesting to kind of like have the best seats at the show. So it's perfect. And yeah.
Shall I go to a question from,
Yeah.
oh, there's no name on this one. What was the single most challenging aspect of presenting such a piece, live and online, and did the restrictions imposed by the current situation actually enhance and inspire the company's creativity?
Wowza. Yes, it did, and of course it's hard work in terms of it doesn't necessarily feel good when you're, as Jessie was saying, rehearsing in this way where for quite some time we couldn't touch each other, so I didn't know if there was going to be touch. So at the beginning we were working without touch. So obviously that's frustrating and uncomfortable, and you have to keep reminding yourself about those challenges and restrictions and finding ways of making them work. But absolutely, like I think as with any creative process, restrictions can be something positive for sure. And they do inspire you to then take creative decisions. They give you something to respond to, which I suppose in a way is very much tied into how I work, which is very much in response to things. So yeah, the challenges become something to respond to, and yes, something that I think all the team have embraced incredibly well. So yeah, I think I'm done with restrictions for a while, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so congrats from Tokyo. Thank you. How big of a challenge is integrating the camera into the choreography? So what point did you join the process?
Sorry. I joined the process mid-May, yeah. So we had a few weeks. They had started, obviously, rehearsing. And so I just jumped into scenes that were sometimes very ready, some were at the beginning. And so it was very interesting to be like sometimes just catching up on what was ready and what was also planned for me, and also being there at the very beginning of a scene and being part of also like, oh, how could we do that? How could we react to what's happening and tell it? So
at the beginning, I was filming around with the mobile phone, and that definitely was, when you speak about revelations as well, yeah, maybe a third or through the process, I realized like stop looking at them, like really look at the phone and try and be in it and use your instinct as a dancer, and don't wait for Tao to join, because the choreography really needed to happen with the camera. So yeah, I think I very often ask everyone really to put themselves in a place where they're on the edge of being in a comfortable place or at the edge of what you know. And so I kind of had to force myself as well to go towards that and embrace that as a choreographer, choreographing for the camera. But yeah, I mean, Tao has been, yeah, he's
And quite
not
an
going
amazing
anywhere.
kind of, it's an amazing kind of handover of trust as well, you know, for him to be directing our eye and for you to almost let go of, you know, what might shift and, you know, it's not like it's fixed, you know, it's going to change each time, I suppose. Okay. Was it this is Bob Black on Twitter. Was it a completely new experience for the dancers interacting so closely, so intimately with the camera?
Yeah, I mean, in all the time that I've been here, we haven't worked in that way. It felt very easy, I think, due to Tao just being in the studio, and as Joan said, you know, the fact that a lot of what we were doing was talking to Joan through his mobile phone, and how does this look? Shall I stand here? You know, this kind of thing. So yeah, I think it could have been quite a shock, and in many ways it is incredibly different to what we're used to. But it did feel like quite a natural step to take or opportunity to try. I think it's worked.
Yes, there is also something about in a theater, everyone has their point of view, and this one's so directed, and I think that makes an amazing job at the three-dimensionality. But there's something around having always this reference there, right there, that kind of feels very different from my experience. Always relating to this one point in space here.
I wonder, like, I had the experience tonight of like not necessarily losing myself in the same way that you do in the middle of a live performance, where it's this sort of transience between you and the audience, and because it's a logistical show, because there are things to move about and you know when you're sort of in and out, I perhaps didn't have that. It was a different kind of thrill.
It's almost like you're technicians, even when you're on the screen, you're almost technicians the whole time because you're measuring your distance and working out logistics and the pathway you've got to do next, and so much responsibility you've given them all. It's great. There's lots of questions coming up about bread. What kind of bread? Is it tasty? Tell us more about bread. Jessie.
So in our first one-to-one rehearsal, Joan came in and said, "So here's a recipe." I thought, recipe, right? And I think we'd maybe mentioned bread once in a very brief conversation. So I set to work reading through his recipe, and I thought, this is brilliant. It's like instructions for movement. You could use this structure in so many different ways. We did decide on a sourdough recipe, hence the oil. Because I guess, a lot of people have been there's been a bit of a national obsession, hasn't there? And I've eaten bits of it. It's been great. I've also quite enjoyed spending hours making little figurines out of bread, out of the dough. We're yet to bake those.
I think there was something as well in relation to the bread around materials and the interest in material, which is something that has driven a lot of what we were doing choreographically, which is getting interested in the material of the body and getting interested in the materials that are present in the space, the object, the props that we use. And I think that, I know as well that that's something that Jessie's interested in, working with materials and stuff. So,
It ties in again in the simpleness and in being in the moment as well, like seizing the present and enjoying the moment, and which again ties in with the baroque.
Carpe diem.
I think it was also a really useful device because actually you don't bake the bread, do you? But it's like with the method of that, there's a recipe, there's a linear thing and an expectation somehow, and you start with that end result. So then we're like, are we now before then? Like in terms of slipping with time, which I guess you couldn't do with just a moving abstract body. You needed something which was kind of figurative and narrative somehow to... I just love the interweaving of going from the atmospheric moving bodies into that kind of like, we're back to them and them as people. And sorry, I'm just rambling. There's a question about how does it feel to be back in your theatre, and is it your first full-length work for the company in the theatre? Is that right?
Yes, it is. I didn't imagine it this way, that it would happen this way, but sort of you again, like I was saying before, I think I had to put myself there, and there's so much trust, I suppose, in the team and in this space that yeah, it's felt really safe and fun. But yeah, we've been creating throughout the year. We've been very, very lucky and privileged to be able to continue to work in some way. So we worked outdoors. The dancers were creating, and yourself created a little Christmas little miniatures, digital miniatures. Solène had been performing as well from her flat, or from a room for digital audiences. So we've been doing things. We've also worked developing a gallery work with Janine Harrington this year, but we hadn't sort of tackled something of this scale. I felt, and the team in the theatre, we felt that we needed to give ourselves time, that we couldn't attempt this in, say, 8 months ago. And I think definitely it's paid off as well to maybe hold, listen and respond to what our communities needed and what we felt was meaningful to put out there. So yeah, it feels very special. And I think we feel very blessed to be able to be here.
I was wondering if you can tour a piece like this in any way, shape or form, and is that interesting to you? Would you do that in another theatre, or how would that work? Is there a future life to the Life and Times?
Yeah, we hope so, very much so. The piece is made with touring in mind, but with digital touring in mind. So yes, we will revisit the piece, and we will tour it hopefully really far, because this model gives us the possibility of connecting with people in other places as far as Tokyo, or wherever people are, and we can, tailor it to their time zone, etc. And that feels exciting. And also there is this dimension in terms of touring internationally, especially, is an amazing experience. It has a lot of value and will continue to do it. Yet it also has a huge environmental cost, and so to be able to go to or to connect with people in those places from our local theatre, from the place where we work and where we are, feels like a really exciting opportunity. So yes, touring here we come, but slightly differently.
So that work local, think global kind of quote, I suppose. I guess then there is also the awkward question of like the power that it takes to stream. And
for sure.
Sorry, I've asked the elephant.
No.
into the room.
It's brilliant that you raise it. Digital is not without carbon footprint and without its problems, and we've spent a substantial amount of money in technology making all of this happen. In terms of, I suppose you can only wrestle with those questions, I feel, and try and attempt, and I suppose this is an attempt, and by no means it's perfect, for sure.
There's a question here. Why did you choose to expose the set and tech members?
That's a question for me. I guess also it's part of celebrating the theater on one side. I think it's also a big tradition in our work that we love to reveal the trick. Like, so really celebrating also how things are made. And I'm a strong believer that things become more magical if you really celebrate the trick and also show how it's made. So it's just also really playing with the theater tradition of making believe, but not still being aware that we're in a theater. So it's all these kind of like things playing together.
I have a question which is around how the choreography was developed. So how did some of those themes work their way into tasks, which is one of the hardest bits I find as a choreographer, like how to translate that great idea into something you're actually going to do, action with dancers.
Yeah, I think lots of mind maps to kind of distill what the idea is where, and then at the same time trying to let go of that the moment that you come into the studio, and just trust as well that there is an embodied knowledge that we carry that you can bring into the rehearsal and respond or establish a dialogue with people. But yes, I think the idea of process interests me generally, and that when dancers engage in real time with a process, with a task that sort of demands from them to be really in a very vulnerable place, because they're not reproducing set steps, but they are engaging with something intellectually and physically. I just love the way that reveals their incredible virtuosity, intelligence, sensitivity, but also their vulnerability in a way, like, because they also, we all struggle as dancers to engage with that, and we have to surge, and you give up, and you try again, and that really interests me in my work. And maybe more specifically, I think the idea of material really was threading through a lot of the work, whether it was dealing with images that feed a certain physicality, or dealing with our interaction with other materials, like, you know, things on wheels or dough, etc.
It was almost like, at times dancers were pixelated or sped up, and it's kind of, I don't know, interesting to be in this kind of somehow period piece, but then have the screen, and then also some of these like extraordinary technologies of the body, I suppose, this virtuosity that meant that my eye was tricked, and I was like, I'm looking at pixels, but they're not behaving like that, but the dancer is, and like, I just kind of went into Alice in Wonderland spiral in my head around what's real anyway.
Yeah, and I think time definitely was maybe the other element that very much is behind a lot of those processes as well. Yeah. Different ways of experiencing time through the body.
I don't quite know how much longer we've got, but 5 minutes. I want to hear more from you, Emma. I want to hear about so you only got into the theatre a few days ago, like a week ago.
We've had 2 weeks on stage.
Okay.
Last week I spent a lot of time lighting it in one way. And we kind of teched it, really, didn't we, last week? And then this week was about throwing all that away and making it very different.
And it must be like extraordinarily hard, no? To be kind of making something which can be, from the little thing I did at Christmas with you guys, and like to pan around and have something backlit, but then suddenly it's front lit and it's flattened and...
Yeah, so I did try and design a rig that was 360, but because of the curtain that kind of cuts sort of into that corner, that was a challenge for me, Matthias. So yeah, the idea was
breaking the space,
that we could recreate any lighting state from any angle. That was my idea. It didn't quite pan out. There's some challenges of this theatre as well, because we sort of take it past the natural cross arch. So there's some sort of challenges there, but yeah, that was the idea, and I think it did work to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like silky smooth. I was like, how's she done this?
What was really exciting, I think, was when we worked out that once we swiped across, we could completely change the lights behind it and then reveal like a different theatre, it felt like sometimes. And once we realised that we could do that, we went for it.
So you're learning about the tools in real time through the tech. It's not
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, definitely.
There's a question here. Were there any filmic inspirations for the work? From Simon Janus. Russian Arc? I've not seen Russian Arc, but it's a single shot, right?
Yeah, indeed, it's a single shot. Like, yeah. I think maybe it's definitely. I think what's the thief, the cook.
I think
that
his wife and her lover.
Yes, thank you very much.
Nearly.
Nearly. I think there's something about the kind of theatricality of that movie, the colors that kind of, I think it's there, even if we didn't necessarily talk about it, but definitely has crossed my mind. I think I don't know, also drawn to. Maybe not so, I don't think there are very specific references, but I am drawn to, for example, Roy Andersson's worlds that are quite filmic, yet very visual and theatrical.
This is the Swedish filmmaker.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of generally a reference in my work to some degree.
So it's people who are working in film but dealing with theatre, essentially.
In a way, yeah, I suppose Wes Anderson comes to mind as well, like all of this quite stage, or as Matthias was saying, almost self-aware of the medium, I would say.
I guess, I don't know, it's inspiration, but of course we looked at as well a lot of stuff that has been broadcasted now live, because of course we have a year of the pandemic and lots of theaters and lots of companies have done live streams. Of course we also try to see as much different things as possible to kind of like see and decide what we like and what works for us and what we have the feeling like doesn't translate so well.
Yeah, actually, on that, that's been a huge influence. Sort of German theater or theater in German-speaking countries, because they definitely felt in the last months that they were really ahead in terms of the explorations of the medium, of the possibilities of the medium. It's anyway a tradition of theater that is much more visual and physical, and yeah, watching that has been really inspiring.
Yeah, I think it had this kind of Pina Bausch-esque. I guess when I think about Pina's work, I think about Beyond the Wings. You have no idea if a whale is about to like fall onto stage or trees are going to, there's potentiality the whole time. So even if that doesn't happen, you're in this state of expectation, dreamlike expectation. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen next. And I suppose the edges of the frame felt like they were your wings somehow, so that at any point, yeah, we were in that state of kind of expectation, which is wondrous and childlike somehow. How does it feel to share a piece that's about celebrating togetherness and the magic of theatre? Is it about that?
It feels good.
Always is.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question to somehow brings it all together, because yeah, I think I was aware that this was somehow a big moment, and that I'm aware always of what am I leaving the audience with, and definitely we want to inspire and challenge and be honest about where we are, but also bring some poetry and hope into the world. I was very aware that we've had to be so sensible in the last 18 months with very good reasons, but that to put back some magic into the world felt necessary somehow.
Yeah, I really had that sense watching it. It was almost like I've been in documentary for the last year and a half, and suddenly I was back into like transformative dream world, and it's stimulating the imagination somehow. And I felt like, oh yeah, I really need that. I didn't know I needed that until I watched it, and I was like, oh, I'm diving into something which leaves space for me, and I don't know, it doesn't feel mundane in the way that your front room has for so long in your screen, and like back into theatre and what it does so uniquely, and dance, I think, particularly somehow. I think it's time to wrap up. I just want to say a big thank you to you all, and to the dancers who are not here as well. So just to acknowledge everyone else and their hard graft, and also the technical team who are all working their ass off. Sorry for swearing. This is all new to me. There's another show tomorrow, 7:30.
Yes.
Live streamed, and you can book tickets, tell your friends, and maybe that's a wrap.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.